Finally, we have Haley Strong in interdisciplinary neuroscience. Her research focuses on psychedelic-induced plasticity following injury and degenerative states similar to stroke and Alzheimer's disease. She's passionate about understanding how cells change in response to psychedelics in various disease states to improve therapeutic development.
Okay.
Haley uses microscopy, behavioral testing, and electroencephalography, or EEG, which is how we normally refer to it, EEG, or live brain recordings, to form a holistic understanding of neural circuit modulation by psychedelics. She pursues this research in the Heinz Group Interdisciplinary Neuroscience Lab, which fosters scientific curiosity through public outreach and dedicated mentorship. Please join me in welcoming Haley to the stage.
Today, I'll share with you how we can unlock auditory circuits using psychedelics as tools for discovery and therapy. So if you're like many people in the room, you might have been at least a little overwhelmed listening to that noisy city street. And what you experienced is called a failure in auditory habituation, or an inability to process or filter out incoming sounds. And this process is actually at the cornerstone of several neurological disorders, where failures in habituation happen regularly, and people experience abnormal perceptions or even sensory overload. But why is it that looking at this image isn't overwhelming? That's because auditory processing is unique and complex. It doesn't simply map an image of reality. Instead, it's a complex, dynamic task for our brain. And that's what's made studying it so difficult, because auditory information in the brain doesn't follow a straight route to its destination. Instead, it's an extremely complex path. And you can actually think of it like a city freeway. There's turns and detours, and sometimes there's a lot of traffic. But what if we could actually use these problems and reframe it to find an answer? What if we could use alterations in perception or habituation to identify the vulnerabilities in these circuits that lead to disease states? In order to do this, we need the right tools. And if we think about auditory processing like a freeway, then habituation is like a newly completed construction project where you have widened lanes and no traffic. And if we had a tool that could alter habituation, we might be able to identify the points in these circuits to target with therapeutics. And psychedelics are the perfect tool for this, because psychedelics powerfully alter habituation and sensory processing in the brain, and they actually rewire freeways. And so to simulate habituation in the lab and study what psychedelics might change about auditory processing, we use a series of tones, and then we analyze how the brain is processing sound using brain waves and also looking at brain structure, or those freeways. And what we see, like you saw earlier, images are way easier for the brain to understand. So here we're actually looking at brain waves. And so the bright red colors mean a strong brain wave, and then the location of that red color at the top or the bottom of the image is the type of wave. And so it appears that psychedelics are actually changing brain waves. They're compressing our brain waves when listening to sound. And that's exciting. But not only that, but psychedelics aren't reducing the number of brain waves that occur. That means the brain isn't habituating to sound anymore. So that means we can successfully change how the brain processes auditory information. Now, some of you might be starting to ask the question, if auditory processing is sort of like traffic on a freeway, then wouldn't stopping habituation cause traffic? Wouldn't that be bad? But what I haven't told you is that psychedelics are actually like the best construction crew you've ever seen. And so while initially they disrupt habituation, in the long run, they put in new, better, more efficient connections in the brain. So what we've been able to show with psychedelics is that we can actually simplify these complex, unanswered questions about how the brain processes sound. And this is really exciting because we know that in disorders with altered auditory habituation, the same system, serotonin, is also the system that's targeted by psychedelics. And that means that therapeutics might actually be hiding right around the corner. So, just like most journeys, what we've found is that the path to the destination is just as important as the destination itself. Thank you all so much.